Okay, how is the recording going now? Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Good evening. This is the 7th of September 2016. I have completed the series of recordings that I have channeled to the NSA, to the USA NSA, and other agencies, security or special service agencies that might be interested or other organizations. However, today I have realized that perhaps it might be a good idea to give my testimony on Radek Sikorski. After all, this is the person thanks to whom I have got into politics at all, the person that has had the role of the leader, even though obviously the person responsible is Donald Tusk. So I thought that considering this inspirational course, I should really give the details of the development of the situation. This is a proper testimony. My situation is very specific. I have been raped, not once, but well, the last rape was last Sunday, if I remember correctly. That was Bogdan Madej's penis in my throat, going down here in the night. It is possible that someone was impersonating Bogdan Madej, for example, Marek Zuber, who obviously had been abusing me earlier. He is directly connected with the last phase of my life, which is the phase of incapacitation. However, I'm not sure, because I do sense this presence of Bogdan Madej, so either it is just an impression that I have, or it is really him. I believe he might have got involved through all sorts of the civic platform or other people's illegal manipulations. Who is Bogdan Madej? Bogdan Madej is the director of finance. It was a director of finance in Bendeludzka Wina, the company where I used to teach English via Lingo, Renata Ballada, Jerzy Barcik. Needless to say, I cried, I don't know, half the night. And obviously this is another rape added to the list of rapes. It is important to emphasize that the Polish government, the Polish authorities, and the people looking at the situation developing all over the world allow it. So the situation is really particular. It needs to be emphasized that these recordings are made in that context. The context of a man coming into my flat to check the gas installation and my not being able to be in one room with him without having the immediate trauma of a rape. So that basically is the situation in my life. I hardly ever leave my flat, and every time I leave it, it is a trauma. And that's more or less it. I am going to testify in the court of law. I'm going to sue people regardless. I will just go beyond myself for those particular occasions and be through it. I will inform the court of the situation. They will know that I am a raped person, that I am a victim, that I am not able to testify normally because I am not able to be in a room with the people. So I will say it before saying anything else, and I believe it will go into the protocol, and I hope it will make it possible for the judges and the people participating in the process to look at whatever is happening with my face and with my with the way I testify from that particular viewpoint. So today, Radek Sikorski. The first time I heard of Radek Sikorski was in 2005. I was a newcomer into politics. My first interest were getting born, so to say, during my stay in the USA. I'm not sure how I was aware of one of the parties which was an extreme right, well, maybe not that extreme, but quite right wing, quite a right wing party. It was Liga Polskich Rodzin, the League of Polish Families. I don't know how it's translated into English. Anyway, I was aware of the existence of that party, and I considered it very dangerous at the time. I don't know how I was aware of their existence because I had not watched the news or listened to the radio. Maybe I would listen to radio, AMFM sometimes, but never paying attention really. So to the news, just the music. So the news were somewhere in the background, never becoming part of my life, right? Part of my life really, and never getting my attention. Still then, when I was in the USA in 2005 during my vacation, I remember I was in a car with my aunt in Chicago, and we were talking, and I remember that I did mention that there was the danger of the League of Polish Families. Funnily enough, probably today this is one of the parties that I would choose if I were to choose, because it's probably the only party that still protects virgins if they do, because this is questionable too. Definitely the law and justice have left the right wing morals and they abuse virgins. So, and the virgin abused by the president of Poland, and Jarosław Kaczyński was abusing me, being fully aware that I'm a virgin too. So this is the situation. Anyway, this is the first anchor point that I have as far as my interest in politics goes. Then I come back to, when I'm in Chicago, it might be connected in a way. I find an advertisement, a job advertisement in a paper. This is from CIA. It catches my attention, and I have the immediate compulsion to report ready for duty, which is quite funny. I was considering it, but I did not go into action, which is probably good for me. Or not, we don't know really. Anyway, what might have caused what might have triggered the political line, I don't know, to be honest. The first thing that comes to my mind is the book by Tomasz Lis on my stepbrother's shelf. So I remember his face, and it is possible that he had some political program, some ideas. Perhaps he was looking for his people, and perhaps for some reason something triggered, and perhaps this is why maybe he was sending this call, and maybe because I'm very receptive and perceptive and sensitive, I might have heard it and I might have responded to it on some subconscious level. As far as Tomasz Lis is concerned, my memory of him goes back to, I think, this were my secondary school years or the primary school years. Anyway, the time when he married Kinga Rushin. My mom told me that there was this young journalist marrying Kinga Rushin then. But I didn't have an idea, and I remember that my mom said to me at the time that I should really watch the news to have whatever orientation about what was going on in the world. But um, I never got interested. I never got involved in it until 2005. So this is Tomasz Lis. Another possibility is my landing in New York because I really had the sense of immediate, of direct feeling of freedom when I landed and entered the Kennedy Airport. So I was very happy. I was extremely happy. So something important must have been happening then on the spiritual plane. And that's more or less it. So I returned to Poland in 2000 and well, before I had watched 7 Days the World, which is a program with three journalists, specialists talking about foreign policy. But I think it was my secondary school. It was on Sunday or on Saturday. I don't remember exactly, but I did not get involved, and I do not remember what they were talking about. I do not remember even one thing I heard then. So that was the situation. And in 2005, I came back to Poland. I think I was in Poland was it October? In September or in October? I think it was October or maybe even November. And I started watching the news for the first time in my life. I started watching the news. Then in 2006, I think, I turned. It was winter, and there was snow, and I was learning. I was doing my German exercises, and I don't know. I got this idea, and I turned the radio on. So first I went into what was it? Antyradio, I think, something connected with Kuba Wojewódzki. And then I ended up listening to Radio Talk FM. So initially I focused on, and I did call the radio to say that there was nightlife in Krakow, because they were saying there was no nightlife. So I had to protest. I said that even though I had not participated in it, so I cannot judge it as it is now. But I used to, and I believe it that there's still nightlife in Krakow. So I made this phone call, and I guess this established a connection that has ruined my life. But still, there is no Radek Sikorski, and it needs to be emphasized. However, what there is are my letters to Radek in my computer, which are love letters, which probably will make a certain Radek laugh a lot. But it so happens that when I was in the USA, I met my brother's friend, Radek, and I fell in love. And it did not work in that direction between us in the end. So we parted, and I mean, we parted as not as a couple, because we are not a couple, we are friends, and we parted in the sense of two persons, no longer having this relationship of friendship and developing, getting to know each other better, and so on. So I went to Chicago, and then I went back to Poland, and but I was still in love with him. So what I did was I was writing those letters in my computer, and I had a whole file devoted to my letters to Radek, which I'm mentioning because of the surveillance I have been under, and I think it is quite possible that someone might have found that file and might have directed it to Radek Sikorski. I don't know, this is just a thought, because um, first I did not connect it, but I remember that there was I was writing about the plane landing, and how I felt that there was this special connection between us still, even though I thought it was impossible, and I meant this Radek, my stepbrother's friend. And it is because of Radek Sikorski's pictures with the plane. There might be no connection, but in case there were, so I want to emphasize it, that it was a different Radek man. And I was not aware of Radek Sikorski's existence at the time, but I must emphasize that there might have been some spiritual existence and presence, because what came to my mind right now was that my brother was drawing my attention to the Sikorski factories there. So it was as if pushing the name into my mind. But as I'm saying, I had no connection, because I did not know the person. Personally, I do believe that Radek Sikorski is my karmic connection. So it might be that he had been in my life because before I got any awareness of it. The first time I became aware of Radek Sikorski was, I don't know when, but in the Law and Justice government. He was the Minister of Defense. And I don't remember much. What needs to be emphasized is that the first phase of my interest in Radio Talk FM was I avoided politics, because I did not feel confident. I'm the kind of person who is quite courageous in expressing her views. However, I need to have a certain basic knowledge, and it needs to be stable, and then I can start building on it. So this is not, as some people think, that I'm the kind of person who thinks I know it all, and I'm the wisest person in the world. No, this is just the situation. This is the attitude of looking into something, or having some certainty about this particular thing, and expressing this certainty. Sometimes I'm incorrect, but on most occasions I am correct. Anyway, I always emphasize that, okay, so this is what I know, but there's a lot that I do not know, and it's quite important. I mean, one of the most important things is to know what you know and know what you do not know. And then there's the whole space between the two, or there's uncertainties, what you call in the Leonardo da Vinci school sfumato. So this is this area where you have, for example, two facts that seem to contradict. One contradicts the other. Then you somehow keep them up, and then at one point you might arrive at some revelation which starts making sense. So Basically, this is my cognitive profile. So we have this situation where I listen to Radio Talk FM, I listen to the news, I follow the news, I listen to Radio Talk FM every day, throughout the day. I mean, my situation at the time was that I was working for CKK Profesja, which was a vocational college for adults, and it meant that I had lessons on at the weekends, and well, sometimes it was 11 hours. However, I did not have any lessons in the working days. I think that's working. I don't remember right now. I need to review my English. Anyway, um, um, throughout the week I was preparing my materials, so I was working actually, but I could listen to the radio at the same time, and I listened from the morning till midnight. And it's been developing obviously into more and more knowledge. So finally, there was this situation when Radek Sikorski was dismissed, or did he dismiss himself? I don't remember right now. But what I do remember is his. I think he dismissed himself. Anyway, I remember that I wrote this email to Radio Talk FM in which I had this idea of I saw him and it was very moving with them. It's not the flag, it's this emblem. I don't know, this very high, and this creates this patriotic ritual, and he was giving back, leaving his office, and he had tears in his eyes. So it was a very emotional moment, and I believe that he was honest with it. And I do believe, I mean, I'm not saying that Radek Sikorski did not have the career set of mind, but I do believe that we have lost something that was really the ingredient of the Radek Sikorski, the leader I was ready to follow at the time. Probably the overall interactions, the level of power. After all, he was to be the head of NATO at one point. He was considered for being the head of NATO at one point. So, living in this world with the current culture might have killed the sentiment and moved him to the plane of interest. However, this is my testimony, and we are putting it in the context of Poland that seems to be becoming a whole, or has become a whole. So this is the moment that anchored my attention. I was not ready to follow him as a leader at the time. I was not in politics yet. I just wrote this email, and I remember that I saw it as Radek. It was not exactly the picture from the Matrix when Neo goes into Smith and does boom, and but it was a picture of a similar kind, namely not destroying the system, not destroying the person, but as if someone was in some sort of iron-clad uniform and somehow managed to make it disperse. So that was the image I had, like he he was able to get free. And this is the idea ahead of the law and justice rule then, that it was really authoritarian, really totalitarian, really very heavy, and very negative on the whole. So then, however, I need to emphasize that even then I was always protesting against, because that one of those ideas that I always had was the importance of dignity. So actually, it was me who always defended the Kaczynski brothers, because not because I like them, but because you don't do politics that way. And if you do politics that way, you have nothing to do with statesmanship or stateswomanship. So, of course, at the time, and I mean, performance, when the satirists put flags in dogs' shit, dogs' excrement, to make a statement, and then there was, a big outrage on the one hand, and on the other hand, there was the whole debate about the freedom of expression. So I was taking part in those things. However, I was not able to make political decisions at that time, I think. Unless it concerns some local politics in the sense of school or university. It needs to be emphasized that in 2009, in 2005, I had enough experience to be a politician in that sense. So skills are transferable, and I was a student. I was acting as the student's representative. As a student of English philology at the Jagiellonian University, and I managed to change this facade function into a real function, because I changed the rules of students being awarded with scholarships, with rewards, not scholarships, with rewards for the results after the 4th year, which is a huge change because you actually changed the system. So I will not give you the details of what it was, but basically, when I entered the room, the only person supporting the motion was the student's representative on the part of the staff, because she would support us as a rule. I mean, of course, she wouldn't support something totally idiotic, but we could rely on her. And all the rest were against. And of course, Zuza Paczewska, who was the other representative, was also she also agreed with the motion. And all the others did not agree with it. So I managed to convince all of them, apart from one person who abstained. From the perspective of time, I'm not sure if we were correct, but I think if this is what I decided then, and I managed to win it, I think that it was the right decision. It needs to be emphasized that I had the reward anyway, because my results were better. So the previous system would give me the reward anyway. So I was fighting for other people, not for myself. So I did have this skill already then, and I had some other skills and some other faculties, like fighting for one of the candidates who did not who did not become the student of the university, even though she had the number of points that qualified her for the studies. But there were some problems with counting the points, and there was a mistake. And I drew the examiners the examination boards, there were two boards, and to the examiner boards, people attention to it, and it got not corrected. So there's something that stinks there. However, from the perspective of time, whatever the considerations were, I must also say that perhaps there had their reasons. Still, the fact remains that instead of being thanked and rewarded with some I don't know, good opinion and perfect reputation for something that was right, I got a tray from the professor who was the head of one of the examination of the whole, actually one of the examination board, but she was responsible for the whole examination. So this is the situation, and well, I I went through it, and after years I still picked it up, and I know that the person in question, whose name I gave, for obvious reasons, we speak of specific people and specific cases. This is a huge legal case, and the person who was responsible for the examination has been working against me behind my back. I am aware of it. The situation is that I cannot simply direct a motion to the court of law, to the police, or to the court of law, because I did it in 2011, in December 2011, when my situation was really tragic. I was on the verge of getting a stroke and ending up dead or in a paralysis that would make it impossible for me to speak for the rest of my life. So these were critical conditions. And the situation was my realizing that I was being framed into pornography, probably pedophilia, and who knows what else. So it was, and obviously it had been going on for some time, and I did connect it with what happened in 2009 in the Veronese Gallery. So as I'm saying, then I had this test of my situation in Poland. And I was posting on Facebook every day, so the people, and I know that I had been followed. So you know, I was quite aware that someone is working on ruining my life, which means that I do have to give names because otherwise, you know, this is my elementary law. I mean, elementary right. I mean, you know, you might have called me because you have my phone number, so you can always call me. For example, if I write something in Twitter and you don't like it, you may call me and say, Agnieszka, could you please take it off? Or if I say something that you are uncertain about, or if you are uncertain about something that I do, or if you are afraid of something I might do, or whatever, you can call me. My phone number, my address are in the note in my Twitter account. And they have been there for a long time. Well, the address is new because I realized that my that the calls can be redirected actually, because the Polish government right now is my enemy. So this is not only the Assanges, and it is also quite possible that the Orange started, the Orange, which is the landline that I have. My phone is the landline. That the and by the way, it is +48 for Poland, 12 for Krakow, and then we have 269 0860. So you know, no one has called me. And the situations are really illegal to the point of torture. These are not like violations of law. This is very, very serious, because torture is illegal in cases where you deal with terrorism. It is illegal. And here we are dealing with an innocent person. So what's been going on in Poland is outrageous beyond whatever limits that you can think of reasonably. You can say, well, we have gone too far. No, we have not gone too far. You are downright criminals. And of course, Poland is going to be sued for that because torture is not the right thing, and the general public consent to me being tortured is just unthinkable. So that goes beyond one person action, a one person illegal action. People know that I'm being tortured. People know that I'm being killed, and they don't mind. Actually, they have. So this is the overall context, and in that context, I am in my right to give all names as a call for help from whoever can help me. That is not in the criminal clique. So this is the situation, more or less, and the mental stamina, the mental setup, and the abilities I got then, negotiation, mediation, are mine, and they have been developing throughout my life. So whatever claims made by whoever are simply inadequate. I completed my studies in 2001. However, I had to repeat the third year 3 times. Of course, at the time I gave up my function as the student representative. I felt that it was not quite right to be the student representative. I failed to complete my studies in the year when I was supposed to. But before, I believe I was exemplary as the student's representative. And it needs to be emphasized that I had to do with people of great caliber. So, well, perhaps some of them did not like me, but perhaps some did not like me as much as I did like them. And perhaps some did not believe in me or do not believe in me now. Perhaps they have turned against me, perhaps they have disappointed me, which is really the case. At least one person could have helped me and she has not. So we had to say goodbye. But what I had learned that it is mine. So some people's claims are really ridiculous because the person is not at the level of my university professors, simply. And then there's my training at St. Hill. And it's again dealing with the people of unthinkable caliber. You have never met such persons, and this is direct contact with. This is a direct contact with the person. I remember it like today. He was the head of the management. Well, maybe some of the heads. I don't remember his functioning, but he was like, really the top, and I had this direct confrontation with him when I had a terrible headache and I did not feel like studying at all, and I felt I was not able to study, and we were standing there, and he said you will go to the course room and complete the course today. So I went to the course room and completed the course that day. That's it. And then I had this direct contact with the RTC representative, which is the person not in the CEO. This is the RTC's Religious Technology Center. This is an organization, a group of people who are responsible for correct application of the Scientology technology. And it so happened that he came down to the room where I was studying. He was doing some, he was doing some his work, and the supervisor asked him if he could give me a spot check. A spot check is checking if you have understood if you do understand all the words in the text you have been studying. It is very important in Scientology to understand each and every word that you go through while reading something, while studying something. So I got the checkup from the RTC representative. And there were two at St. Hills, and St. Hills one of the top organizations. So this was unthinkable prestige, and I passed it. And I was what needs to be emphasized is that I was in the direct interaction. So you are really ridiculous for me when you say that you have put me on some high level or something like that. No, you have not. He did years ago in 2003. This is the context. Apart from that, there's my study. There are my drills. There are the materials I have studied. Well, it's not only that. The first contact I had in terms of Scientology, one of those outstanding contacts, so to say, was with Misha, which was the head, the golden officer, I think that's what it's called, the head of the unit of international translations, international ITU, international translations unit or something like that, in Los Angeles. So, this is like top management organization. He was the person responsible for translations into all languages all over the world. And I was in a direct contact with him in 2001. So, excuse me, but you are really being pathetic. I mean, you may reject Scientology. You may reject the rightfulness or whatever of the existence of the church. But you cannot say that you have the higher level than they have had. Because the Church of Scientology is one of the superpowers in the world we are living in today. And this is my reality. So this is what I had in 2005. What needs to be added to that is that I was actually dismissed from the church. And the situation of the dismissal, when I had this confrontation with the head of division, the first division, correct? So this is again, you have, how many divisions do you have? Agnieszka needs to review that too, but I think 8, perhaps. And you are dealing with the head. So, above that you have one level and one level. The level is the captain, then you have a level, and you have, and then you have divisions. If I remember correctly, I think I do. And I had a direct confrontation with him in a library, in a reading room, concerning him making me join the CEOC, making me sign the CEOC contract in public. So this is my level, okay? Of course, the consequences have been reaching. And this is what I had by 2005. Apart from other things like actually working and studying and but these are real life situations when you handle power actually, because those people are on the positions above you, and each confrontation establishes your position in the world. And this is what I was aware of when I decided to get involved to support the civic platform. Radek Sikorski had this anchor, attention anchor from me when he joined the civic platform in their attempt to take over the power in Poland, there was another person that I really liked. For some reason, it was Katarzyna Hall, who became the Minister of Education. But later on, she was replaced, and I don't know if she was replaced with that person immediately, or if that person became the Minister of Education later. But I know that at the time I was already I have already left that area of activity. But at that time, I don't remember the name. This woman with glasses, thin face. I really liked her. She had good ideas, and I believed she could change the education. I was really ready to cooperate on that because I considered myself an expert. And I still do, believe it or not, even though you have been trying very hard to prove me a bad teacher, a failure, in fact. So, okay, fine, perhaps not for your children. I'll go elsewhere. If I do. Right now it's impossible, of course, because of the connection between my mouth and penises, so obviously I cannot enter a classroom. And the conditioning into pedophilia. It does not go away like that. If you had been conditioned to become a pedophile, you never come back to life. Or perhaps you can come back to life one day, but not not easily. I mean, it's never the same. So you never have the ease you used to have. Because it never crossed your mind that someone could create anything of the kind. And now you have this, all this load, all this charge that they have put onto you, and you have the actual conditioning. You have it in your brain. You have had the things put into your brain that had never been there. So which is of course one of the charges I'm going to forward. Skoczylas? I'm not certain, but perhaps. And then there was also this woman that I really liked. I think that it might have been taken otherwise, because I said that she was beautiful and perhaps she's not, like the cover face or something, even though she had the cover photos where she was a cowboy, I mean a cowgirl, the sheriff, Sheriff Bess. And there was a lot of laughing when the civic platform took over the power, as she was to deal with corruption, and she actually was able to pinpoint this one fish that they bought illegally. Was it a herring or something else? But then the name has skipped me. This is the result of what they have done to my brain. But you will recognize at the time she was representing human rights, and she was really winning my involvement, not only support but involvement. Actually, one of those people with whom you travel on. Whom you want to help, you want to work with her. So that was the situation. And then I remember that day when they organized the Blue March, and I wrote this letter to Radio Telegram and put my picture there, which was, one of, I consider, I mean, obviously I know your taste now, so, but I consider the picture beautiful. It was one of the best of my pictures, and I actually put it there on the letter. Even though I had only one left, so and I wrote that I had all this strong sense of a new space being created, and I really believed in it. So I really went for it, and this is why I am accusing Donald Tusk now, because I trusted him, and he made some promises. One of the promises was that of counteracting, of fighting nepotism or cronyism, if you prefer to put it this way. It was that was connected with my work in the CKK Profesja, and I was really doing very well with the civic platform at that time. Like I had this strong patriotic feeling rising with, for example, the groups that I had in the specialization of advertising, advertisement, commercials, and so on, promotion. Their task for an accent mark, or actually part of the exam was to promote oral exam, was to promote Poland. So there was it was present somehow. It was I was participating in the project actually, but that was 2005, 2006, and then I started going into the foreign policy more and more. I got interested in diplomacy, which connects with my initial decision to solve the problem of terrorism in 2001. I can't quite explain to you why, but believe me that it did not connect with politics. In 2001, I mean, this is quite surprising and shocking, isn't it? Because you would normally think of going into politics and changing the world so that we could solve the problem. I mean, since the very beginning, my position was different because people were talking about fighting terrorism, and initially I phrased it that way too because that was the speak. However, I was always thinking of it differently. I was against the policy of revenge. I was really interested in the other side, and I did say it. I did write it to Misha. And he was Russian, by the way. I don't know. Perhaps he used to be an agent. But I did write it to Misha that I wanted to negotiate with Al Qaeda, with Bin Laden, and he said, "How do you negotiate with terrorists?" And I said, "I don't know, but I believe I can, or I believe we can. But anyway, I believe I could." So this was the postulate made in 2001. And since 2001, I have been working on it. Part of it was obviously my going to Pakistan to meet Bin Laden. And it needs to be emphasized that I was living in sexual abstinence. Okay, it needs to be emphasized that it was connected with my love for Ron Macmillan. So, because you know the relation, the overall relations with Radek Sikorski along that line and the civic platform do have this love ingredient in them, and possible sex offers which have never come from me. But you know, we need to handle it. We need to discuss it. So, the situation in 2001. I handled my ethics, as we say in Scientology. So, you know, I got myself back, and I have never lost myself since. Even though I have been going through all sorts of devastating situations, including getting dismissed from the Sea Org. So, you know, I told you about this confrontation with you. You know, I was like, overnight, and I had uh, a guard sitting at my room in the corridor throughout the night. You know, you get to think of, oh my God, like, you know, you have the sense that all the people around you had gone totally mad. And remember, I already the day on that day earlier, I wrote a quick note to the RTC guy, to the representative, and it was, I think they are trying to get rid of me, and I ran to his mailbox to put it there, because you know that was the scope of danger, because you know all those people had been going mad. I also wrote the piece to that I handed into a note that I handed into my ethics officer, my MIA, Beate, where I wrote that they could not, when I actually learned that they were going to, that I was to go to Poland the next morning. So you know, it's well, it's one day and next day you're out. That I was afraid I would be cut off source and that they could not do it to me. Well, you know, whatever they have done by now, I I have my own connections, and so now that would not be my problem. But at the time I thought that, my God, so now so what? Now I'm going to lose that all. Um, and 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 so this is the situation. Um, but why did I mention it right now? Oh yeah, Ron Macmillan. You know, in 2002, I arrived at St. Hill to do my volunteer minister course. I got the introductory membership, which is for 1 year, and I was to do my volunteer minister course. One of my supervisors was Ron Macmillan, and I fell in love immediately. I mean, this was like, I entered the room, this is like, you know, Titanic. When I hear, when I hear, once more you open the door, I always think once more I open the door and you know he's standing there at the window. Okay, right now I don't exclude the possibility that he was a bait. I can, you know, and I hear all those things about how he has fallen in love with Ola, and oh my God, what has happened between them, whether it has happened or not. One thing is certain, he has not been there for me enough to save me from what has been done to me. However, you don't understand my relationship with Ron at all. And let me put a full stop here. Uh, anyway, that was love at first sight. You know, when people started messing it up, and Kenny was one of the people employed by the church, I believe, by the Sea Org, to to destroy that relationship, to destroy that affinity that we had naturally. Then it seemed that, I mean, you know, it seemed to be the end, but I never lost hope. So I went through the EPF, and I remember how I was standing there at the hut on the New Year. Was it the New Year Eve or Christmas Eve or Christmas? I think it was the New Year Eve in 2002, 2003. That was my second arrival to St. Hill when they got me on the EPF. And my plan was to be there. It was to be the best celebration, the best festival of my life, and I was to be there with him, of course. And I was standing alone at the hut because I was not even allowed to work in England. So I was not with other EPFs, the people training to become SEAL members, because I could not work. So I was alone in the hut, in total isolation. And I had all those thoughts about him being there, and all those, images of his. Yes, this is what they have done to him. You see, they. This has nothing to do, man. They are going to be sued for it. The throat. I have gone through all of that. One of the reasons is that indeed, my uncle told me that the best thing I could do for me and Ron was to become a SEAL member, because the best thing you can do in the world at all is becoming a SEAL member, which is not the truth, of course. And I said, this is my official standpoint. But then I have gone through it, and the things were, when I was on the EPF, there was this woman. She was an auditor in foundation, and I had heard she was his best friend. There had been nothing between them, but I remember sitting there with Kenny at the table, and them sitting there at the table. And when I said that, well, I think there is something between them, and he said, no, she's his best friend. She's a married woman. I said, well, there's something there, and then when I was on the EPF, my senior Mathilde told me that they were a couple. So because I said that I had this problem with him, I was in love with this man. I wanted to marry him, and I was on the EPF, and he was not on the EPF. So she said, well, he has a girlfriend, and then I remember her. I was studying in the course room and for the staff, and she came there to the other, not the sleeper, or not as the SEOC member. She was not the SEOC member. She came to, and she wanted to do her drills. And I remember how she was doing my communication. She was doing a communication drill with me, and was like, and I knew that she was wrong, and she was like, pushing all those sex images at me, like, all those sex energies. I was sitting there and, be coaching her. So this is like, I heard, oh my God, I'm an angel. I'm a saint. But I was not able to do anything with it because, this is my ethics. And then there was a situation when I had access to files. I think the woman was a sister of one of the men who was interested in me, actually, from Budapest. I did not know he was interested in me at the time, but then when I thought of it, I thought he must have been interested in me, unless he was interested in my friend, my soulmate. Maria, because he was doing all this bodybuilding. So then I thought, oh, he must have been showing how attractive he was, and he looked very attractive. But this is not what attracts me. But I remember that he came to St. Hill when I was already in the SEOC, and I remember I had this good communication with him. With this, there was this good connection. And I felt that he was checking what was going on with me, and I was really feeling very well. This was almost before my leave, and I was, and his sister was at St. Hill, and I remember that we were there working with the files, and I remember that there was the situation when I could take Ron's telephone, just to get this telephone and call him from Poland, whatever, I don't know, somehow fight for it. But I did not, because I mean, this was official, so the number was not for my private use. And this is the situation is getting created all the time, and it developed. So I came back to Poland, and he was there. Oh, well, I remember that I also, I had this. She, as the auditor, was checking my statement when I went to say that I had solved the problem of Ron, and it was no longer a problem. So, the paradox of the whole situation. And of course, I knew that it's not the truth, but I wanted to, because I have heard that this message has come to my head saying that I had no right to restrict his freedom. So I thought, well, indeed, if he is to be happy with her, well, fine. I mean, I loved this man, so. And I came back to Poland, but I never lost hope. And my pupils in Waldbrom always had the sentence, "He has blue eyes." They were always blue. And I believed in it for years. When I was working at the Verona Gallery in 2009, I went to a kiosk, the place where you can buy cigarettes and magazines and other things like that. And I had a sense that I saw him, but then I thought, no, I must be imagining, this is like you want to see this person so much that you actually see the person there, even if it's not the person, sort of like. And, the time in the van, the gallery was a devastation anyway, each and every day. So it's somehow, I mean, it is quite important because for all those years, I was spiritually married to Ron Macmillan, in the sense of not us having had sex, because we have not, but in the sense of me belonging to that man. And there being no other man, waiting for that man, waiting for a miracle of him arriving somehow, and I don't know, but then in 2010, I found his profile in Facebook, and I saw that he was a married man, and he had, of course, it was devastating, because I saw his picture with his children, and the children had, like aliens. So it was my god. Oh, okay, that was Alexandra, he channeled me. So I thought, this is exactly I mean, this man should be the father of my children, to cut a long story short. It's like, someone else is living my life. So this is what I thought of his wife. But also I thought, well, I saw their picture, and he was a perfectly happy man in that picture. I mean, they really, so 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 that was the end. More or less, which is quite important, because this is the way I view things. And suddenly there comes the whole chaos of people suggesting I wanted to give oral sex to Radek Sikorski, and that was my problem. That was my huge problem, because he preferred Maja Rostowska. And then we moved to other people whom I wanted to serve as the sucker too. So it is vitally important to place Radek Sikorski in that context. Radek Sikorski becomes the Minister of Foreign affairs. I am interested in diplomacy because I have reached that level where I think that I could get involved, I could work, and I could, at that time, I had already been involved in Tibet. Luckily enough, the issue is part of the policy. So at that time, the civic platform, when they started, was supporting the Dalai Lama, was supporting the Free Tibet, was supporting the fight, was talking about solidarity. We had all those anniversary celebrations where the Nobel Prize winners were invited. We were a wonderful brand. Indeed, this is a paradox again, because at the time I was rejecting this icon of John Paul II, but that is connected with what was being done to me. I mean, I had been very strongly, I had had this very strong push into the sanctity of the Virgin, actually. I don't think I have managed to escape it. I had been honest. It is not, I mean, I do believe that I should have a family life. I do believe I am sacred. I have no doubt about it. And I do believe that this crown of virginity, this particular statement, I mean, bearing this torch, carrying this torch of the womanhood, real womanhood in the woman, wanting to have one man, her husband, and having the dignity, having the respect, and the woman not having to be a woman locked in a house, in the kitchen, in the bedroom, taking care of the children, bringing up children, doing laundry, cleaning, and ironing, the woman being quite powerful, and still being able to stand up to the man, and still deciding that she wants to be a virgin when she meets the man she wants to marry, and marry him and have him as the husband for the rest of her life. Okay, then all sorts of things can happen, but this is so this is the torch worth carrying, and but this so the Virgin has to have her freedom. The things that were happening in Poland were just unthinkable. I think I was actually getting some sort of certain ideas were coming to me, suggesting that there were some bets about me being a virgin or not being a virgin, actually, and it is connected with my work in the Veronese Gallery. Under the logo of the Lying Uniform, which stands for virginity, people coming to the gallery and looking at me, penetrating my vagina, looking for the hymen, or just doing experiments to see my responses. This is 2009, March to May, and don't take my attention from what I'm talking about, and what and you have those ideas, and you have the torch, you carry the torch, and then you have also other ideas. One of them was the fight for the free Tibet. Apart from the personal mission, which I have accepted as a personal mission in my world, because I don't have an agreement with anyone. No, perhaps it's from the previous life. I don't say it's not of solving the problem of terrorism and the Muslim terrorism specifically. But you know, actually the first anchor is in my first year of studies, my course with Peter Lees I was. When I was a student, the first year student, history was definitely not my strong point, and all history teachers can confirm it, including the ones from the university. And I was to write my argumentative paper the conflict in the Northern Ireland, and I did, and it had to do with terrorism, and it had to do with the two sides of the story, and it had to do with narratives. You know. That's when it started, actually, but that was about Britain. But then this is something that that I can always resort to, because Margaret Thatcher decided that this conflict could be solved, and this is her faith in the possibility of solving the problem that made it possible to solve it. And I do believe we can solve the problem of terrorism, only the Muslim terrorism, only it's much more complex. And the first thing is to diagnose the problem correctly. Sadly enough, my findings and recommendations have not been accepted by the USA nor the rest of the world, but I have managed to get some attention and help in the sense of being able to see the issues the way the other side sees it, that it's the Muslims that fight for their identity. And that's basically it. So this is where we are now. The phone has rung for the second time, which means perhaps I will treat what I have said so far as the first part of the testimony. It does relate to Radek Sikorski, each and every piece of it, because Radek Sikorski is the figure that is the leader, basically. So if I have created Agni Puritania, that is mine. It is mine. But even when I was already creating it, I remember that was the time when Radek Sikorski had a conference or whatever, and I just read some part of his message in Interia.pl, and he said he made some statement concerning. Well, I don't remember the statement, but I remember that it was that sort of question that tells you, for example, I don't know, you believe in terrorism, and then what you do is you sit down and write an answer. So I wrote. It is the first time I formulated the Agnipolitanian policy, or was it still the Agni policy? So even if we had already gone our separate ways, he still had this reach for making me report on what I am doing, even if I'm already doing it my own world and going my own way. So this is to give you some idea. Uh, we are in the celebrations that create the Polish brand, which I assumed would be Polish. We had John Paul II as the icon, which I was rejecting. On the religious ground, I mean, on the grounds of having a sense of the Opus Dei, trying to suck me in, to cut a long story short. I knew I would not reject Scientology. I would not distance myself from it. I would not distance myself from Buddhism, and I was not Islam aware at the time. But there was already the first connection was when I was working in the Varnasa Gallery. There was a Jew, a person who had some problems with his brain and polio, and the person who always had some situation which made him seem homeless in a way, living with the church or something like that, under the care of the church. I don't know his situation fully, but there was something wrong with him. However, he obviously sought my company. He sought a company, but he would come to the shop and he had a chance to speak. But we went into a conflict at one point, and it's quite significant what happened in that conflict. That is because that was that exact empowerment that I got at the time. So as he left, he said that he thanked me for all. And I said, I hope you would remember. I hope you will remember it when we meet in Palestine, which was the first situation I realized that I was actually channeling someone. And this is when I became the voice of Palestine. Some Palestine, because I do not represent the country and I would never claim it. I have never gone into any agreements with the community, and I live on, I have my own system. But this is obviously there had been a voice calling for my involvement in that very case. So apart from the New Tibet, we started to have, apart from the Free Tibet, we started to have Free Palestine at one point. Obviously, these are not popular issues with the USA and the rest of the world as it is today. So, what needs to be emphasized is that by the time I had been in love with Radek Sikorski, but there was the situation when he was talking about his wife and Applebaum on the anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, and it was obvious to me that he was still in love with her, so I gave it up. And the way I thought of it was that because how come? One day I was watching a movie. It was a movie, and I don't know if it was not Julian Assange trying to mess things up already then. So it must have been, I don't know, 2008, 2009, or 2010. I don't remember exactly. But there was the movie on TV about the prisoners in New Zealand or on some, some island in Oceania. It was the island for prisoners. I don't know history well enough to know it, but there were, this is where they would send prisoners, and this is when I had this apparition of like she goes in my armchair. So I did not know what was happening, but it did seem like someone entered your life, and then he was the presence. But also, when I was working in the Baroness Gallery, I had this is why I thought that I must have been matched with Maja Rostowska, because I heard this. I heard Sikorska all the time, and there was a sense of I was getting the sense of like I was to become his wife. And then it was only recently that I realized maybe it was Maja Rostowska who was to become his wife. And I was being matched with her already then. And the situation was to see, it was not for me, it was for her to see how she was feeling being matched with me. Was she already there in 2009? March to May. And this is, of course, a chart that I'm going to forward to. From my perspective, it seemed that Radek was in courtship, that he was courting me. And I also want you to be aware of the way I perceive it. I know my value, and I value myself very high. The reason for it is the way I had lived my life. And I had not known anyone whom I would respect more, because no one knows me as well as I know myself. And I know each and every motivation, each and every thought. And I have good reasons to be proud of myself. Because I'm my own ideal. I mean, if you were to give me an ideal I could follow, that would be me. I had never met a person that I have never met a person that would make it for me, apart from myself. And this is connected with me holding a lot of people in respect, because what I get is the best of them as my ideals and me trying to live it. And by now, I have gone into a war. So now I'm cut off from that perfect life conditions. The war had been waged against me, and well, I'm surviving. And this is why I call myself the queen of my queendom, as we call Italia. I'm independent. This is my country. I will die for it. And I do believe I have extraterrestrial empowerment. So I am creating a future. And it's worth fighting for. And you will not have it. Because even if I die, even if you try to pervert it, the spiritual powers behind the creation will strike back at you with full force. Trust